Tonight at 9, right here on 8, American Masters premieres a new film, Lennon NYC. The film focuses on John Lennon's life with his family in New York City during the 1970s. It also features previously unreleased studio recordings from the double fantasy sessions. Included are classic photographs from those sessions. Photographs taken by David Spindel, who now makes his home in Anthem. He'll be here to share some photographs and memories, but first, a brief clip of the film that opens with several of Spindel's photos.
I want just sashimi, tuna, tamago, and sashimi. Just give me that raw fish. Just give me that. All ready, everybody? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, yeah.
He was back in the studio doing what he loves. He was probably the happiest person in the world.
Blues around my head.
He's like a little kid in a candy store. He was having a ball. And happy as hell to be singing again. And we would be in the middle of a good take, and if all of a sudden he just felt like breaking into some lyric that would make everybody laugh and make mistakes, he would just do it.
Okay, we'll try one more.
Okay, just really watch yourselves after coming out of the Latin, because the only way I know is because I have to sing it faster the second time.
And joining me now is David Spindel, the photographer who captured those classic images of John Lennon back in 1980 at the Hit Factory in New York City. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
How did you get that gig?
Well, to make a long story short, basically, my wife and I were designing a new home in Rockland County, and the architect's wife-to-be wanted to be an agent for a photographer. So I said, well, come in, I'll tell you all about it, how to do it. We spent about a week doing it, and she said, well, how do I find the photographer? I said, well, you can represent me. She said, how can I do that? I have no experience. I said, you have to start somewhere. About a week later, she called me up and said, my husband-to-be's brother got a job working with these, quote, musicians, and they're looking for a photographer, and they told him about you. I said, oh, God. I said, I don't do that kind of photography anymore. I'm a studio photographer. I do still life. I do portraits. They said, but you'll enjoy working with them. I said, who? I can't tell you. So I said, well, the only way I could get out of this, because I had worked with Kiss. I did album Kiss the Elder and Kiss Alive and a lot of other album covers. I don't know if I... So I put together an album of photographs I figured for sure they wouldn't like. I had a lot of my romantic still lifes. I had a shot of a white woman nursing a black baby. Well, of course, John and Yoko saw those. We love this guy. We want to hire him. So I said, how do I get out of this? I gave him a price no one in their right mind would pay. They agreed. I said, now what do I do? I said, how about a purchase order? The guy says to me, don't worry, they're good for the money. I said, who? He said, can't tell you. I said, why? He said, well, this guy hasn't done anything in 5 years, and it's a secret. And I didn't follow music. I don't know who could possibly be. I said, all right, I'll go. I go up to the Hit Factory. I'm sitting there maybe an hour. I'm getting ticked off. I got so much work to do in the studio. And this Asian woman walks out, and I didn't know Yoko by sight. Sure. And she says, the first thing I would like is a group shot of everyone. She takes me into this room where I had my equipment. And I said, how many people in this group shot? She said, about 12 or 15. I said, excuse me, I don't think you can fit that many people in this room. So we went to another area to see where I could photograph them, and I found the couch, and then we set it up, and I go back in the room to get my equipment. There's a guy lying on the floor getting a massage. I said, boy, these musicians got it made, you know? The guy turns over, it's John Lennon. I almost went into cardiac arrest. Him I knew.
Yeah, yeah.
So John says to me jokingly, I hope, he says, you know, I usually charge people a fee to watch me get a massage. So I said, I'm the kid from Brooklyn, you ain't gonna tell me that. So I said, guess what, John? I usually charge people a fee to watch me move my equipment. We'll call it even. He laughs, he said, I think I'm gonna like working with you.
Well, and you did work with him, and we got some photographs here. If we can take a look at some of these as we continue to talk about this photo shoot with John Lennon. What was he like?
Unbelievable. He was just, well, it's like we're talking. There was no pretentiousness about him. He was just the guy next door, and he enjoyed what he did. And one of the reasons these photographs have this unique kind of quality to them is, I told him that, John, you're going to be involved recording. I said, if I have a flash going off every 2 seconds, like a paparazzi type photographer, it's going to be a distraction. So I said, I'll just be a fly on the wall. You won't even see me. And I shot everything available light, which was kind of difficult because there wasn't a lot of light in the studio. And I had film that I brought for my strobes. So some of the shots, and 3 in particular, really came out beautiful because I had to put my camera on the glass of the recording booth so I could hold it steady enough.
Interesting.
There was like a 15-watt bulb above him,
Yeah.
so there was no light. And those 3 shots, you got the motion of him in the recording booth moving. And those are the most precious shots of him of all.
So he wasn't. Yeah, we have a shot of him actually at the audio board there, which is a fantastic photograph.
Well, he was just sort of daydreaming a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
And everyone loves that photograph.
And I would imagine, as you mentioned, you were pretty much invisible, weren't you? He wasn't, because no
and a
flash.
lot of shots were with, that plus I shot a lot with a telephoto lens, so he didn't even see me.
Yeah. And we have another shot, I believe, of him playing guitar, kind of a wider shot. And again, you don't see those kinds of shots, this kind of stark black and white photography of John Lennon at that point in his career.
And what everyone says, how do you get that effect? He says, usually you have a mist around the light on, on a foggy night on the street. I said, I have to give away a trade secret. So I took up my camera and I said, look, you breathe on the lens, you clear the middle, and you shoot.
Interesting.
And you get that effect.
Pre-Photoshop, huh?
Yeah, you can buy a filter for $90, but, I usually break them, so I came up with that.
We have another photograph of John Lennon and Yoko Ono speaking at when he's at the audio board. There we go. And their relationship. What'd you see?
Well, what was unique about John, he sort of did his music and let Yoko handle all the business. He didn't want to know from him. He was basically a stay-at-home dad. And even when the film comes out later this evening, you'll see how he basically just wanted to stay at home and raise his son because he was upset that he realized with his first son, Julian, he was always on the road. And when he came home, he saw this kid that he didn't recognize because he grew so much.
Yeah. Did you, I have to, when you're around someone like that and you have a picture of them, an idea of them, and now when you hear John Lennon's music, because you met him and knew him and worked with him, did that change the way you heard his music from Beatles onward?
Yes.
How so?
Because initially when the Beatles were around, and even when he came out with the Double Fantasy, I was too involved with my own work, my studio photography. I heard it, but I didn't really have the time to listen to it carefully. And then after, as I got older and had more time to listen, and especially when I saw the documentary that was done, the words to his songs are just incredible. He made life really beautiful. That's you'll see in the documentary this evening that what he went through to stay in America, and try and promote peace in the world.
Yeah.
To quote the government, apparently didn't want him around. They tried to get him out of the country. And what he went through to stay in America was unbelievable.
What you went through as far as his photo shoot is interesting as well, because as we've seen, these are all black and white photographs, but there were color photographs as well, and there's a story behind that.
Well, initially Yoko said, just, shoot black and white. I said, how can I pass up an opportunity like this? So I shot color also, but I didn't tell her. And then I sent slides up to her, to her office, which, believe it or not, only a few of them were available. There were 72 of them, but they seem to have disappeared over the years. And what was even funny is I had shot some color negatives, and I took the roll and I started to wind it up into the cassette in the old type film cans, now
Sure.
digital. And it went into the cassette, so I said, well, I'll put it in the safe, I'll unwind it later. And I forgot about it. Maybe 15 years later, I'm cleaning out my safe. I said, why did I save this roll of film? And I looked at the date, I said, well, I was going to throw it out. I said, well, I must have saved it for a reason. I sent it out to the lab, and they processed it, and the guy calls me up and says, they're pictures of a guy playing a guitar. So I said, I don't photograph people with guitars. I totally, 15 years later, who's going to think that it was John Lennon? I said, do me a favor, send it over, let me look at it. As soon as I saw the negatives, I almost passed out.
Yeah.
I said, I have color shots.
Yeah. And you also have a color shot, I believe, of that couch, that area. Remember you
That's
said
the famous shot, the couch shot.
Of everyone kind of jammed on the couch there. That's it, huh?
That's the only way I could get them all together. It's not ideally what I would have liked to have done, but I had to work fast and work within the conditions that were available.
You still keep in touch with Yoko Ono?
I get a Christmas card every year.
Do you?
And I saved them all. Someday they'll be on, some auction site.
Your career, you've done a lot in your career, and we don't have too much time left, but I noticed that you walked in with a Nikon, was it D90?
Right, that's
Yeah,
the latest one.
that's-
Or that I bought. They've already come out with other ones too.
That's digital, and I'm an amateur shutterbug myself, and digital has changed everything. It allows a lot of us who couldn't compete in the film world, all of a sudden we can take half-decent
Everybody's
shots
a photographer.
Well,
yeah.
how do the pros feel about digital as compared to film?
Well, in my case, I love it. Some photographers, called professionals, swear by the old system, but I don't. Between the digital system and a computer, I'm doing things I could never do before. It's like opened up a whole new career for me.
Well, you had quite a career before. This is going to be fascinating to watch tonight. The photos are very well done. That stark black and white is fantastic. And you got a book there,
Yeah,
correct?
there's also a book called Starting Over that just came out by Ken Sharp, and it has 16 of my photographs in it.
All
and I'll
right.
be doing some signings in some bookstores. It's
David-
even neater, real quick, is my son-in-law has a music hall in Manhattan, and Sean is going to be performing it in January.
That's great stuff. David, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure, too.